All right, so we will get started with any questions I can answer based on what we've covered, discussed till now. Anything I can answer. Any questions? All right, believe no questions. So what I'm going to do now, where we stopped in the last session is we want to have a live simulation of how to gather requirements and how to ask questions. So the way we gather requirements is we conduct JAD sessions to gather requirements, wherein we identify business rules, functional requirements, UI requirements. So the goal we want for this session is we are going to learn how to do this. So in order to facilitate the discussion, I am sharing a screen. So I believe we've seen this before as well. So we want to assume that this is how bankofamerica.com would look in the year 1999. What we don't see here is we don't see capabilities of online banking. So let's say we have initiated a project called online banking, and we are meeting SMEs for the very first time. And the business requirements that we want to talk about in this JAD session is we want to talk about ability for a user to register and ability for a user to log in. So these are the two business requirements that we want to talk about and gather requirements for in today's JAD session. Any questions? So I'm going to play the role of SME, subject matter expert, and you would play the role of a business analyst. Now, the rules of the game, whenever you conduct a JAD session, whenever you gather requirements are, you want to identify, you want to understand few things. Number one, you always want to ask open-ended questions. Anyone has an idea what do we mean by open-ended question?
I think a question that you have to answer it. You can't just say yes or no.
So what could be an example of an open-ended question or a closed-ended question? So would you like tea or coffee? So that's a closed-ended. Why? Because I already am giving you predefined choices, and you simply have to either say coffee or tea. So that's a closed-ended. There's no room for you to think. However, when we do a JAD session, it's all about thinking and speaking your mind. So instead, an open-ended question would be, what would you like to drink? That would be an example of an open-ended question. So that's number one. And number two, when you get the requirements, you always want to ask questions in a logical sequence. So you always want to put yourself into the shoe of the end user and always want to ask questions with respect to, if I were an end user using the system, what is it that I'm going to do first? What is it that I shall do next? And so on. So if you ask questions in the logical sequence, again, it means that you would never go wrong in asking questions and you would never miss out on gathering important pieces of requirements. So these are the two things. So with that said, we'll do a role play. I'll play the role of SME. You'll play the role of a BA. And again, as I said, the two business requirements that we want to discuss in this JAT session is ability to register and ability to log in. So feel free to start asking me questions. And whenever I give you requirements or I give you answers, which are finalized requirements, I would want you to keep taking notes as if you would be doing in a JAT session like a scribe as well. So let us get started. So what's the first question that you may want to ask?
For ability to register, I would probably ask who can register. Only the type of registrars.
I would say a bad question. Why is that a bad question?
Oh, okay. I
Let's
may
say,
know. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
you know what? Not that bad of a question, but not a great question. So if you say who can register, I would say anyone who's a customer of the bank and who has not registered before can register.
Okay, then what do you want? Like the requirements for registration? Like what kind of information should the user or the customer?
Not a great question.
Oh, you're making me nervous now.
That's fine. That's my job. Keep talking though. That's what I want. So
Maybe how would you like the page layout to look like?
how would you like the page layout to look like? See, I mean, you guys are asking decent questions, but not the right question. The reason is I again want you to think, right? I want you to think in terms of a logical sequence of a workflow. So you want to ask questions right from what is it that the customer will do first? What will they do next? What will happen next? If you follow that sequence, you'll always ask me the right questions in the right order. The kind of questions you're asking, at the end of the day, when we finish this exercise, yes, I'm going to discuss, Pratik, the layout of the page. But that question that you just asked me, it's a couple of questions sooner than you'd actually ask me if you would follow a logical sequence. So never ever jump from one question to the fifth, to the eighth, to the second, to the third. You always want to go in the logical sequence, and that will really, really help.
What happens when they click on the register button? Like,
I was waiting for this, Krupa. Thank you. So what is your role as a business analyst? Your role as a business analyst is you want to gather requirements. And what did you just do? You told them that, boss, you know what? There will be a button called register. Just tell me what happens when you click on it. What is it that you did wrong here?
close-ended question.
Yeah, you just told them the requirement that you need a button for registration. Just tell me how it works. So we don't want to do that either. And I'll tell you this, I mean, for the first 2 or 3 questions, you will struggle, and I want you to struggle. But once we'll go in the flow, you'll realize that, you know what, it's such a repetitive task. It'll be very repetitive, the kind of questions. And Shirin, feel free to ask questions if you have any, or if you want to talk. So it's nothing like you are not supposed to be talking. All right.
Sure, thank you.
How can they register?
Now we are talking. So what you just did, Krupa, is you just said, just tell me how should they be doing it, right? You are not giving them any options. It's a classic example of a great open-ended question. Saying, I know nothing. You tell me, how do you want to register? Perfect. So that's the right question you can ask. Now I'm giving you a requirement. I'm the SME. So I'm saying, you know what, Krupa, I don't think I want them to register from this page. Instead, what I want is on this page, I simply want a link called online banking to be displayed. That's all I want on this page. So that's the first requirement. So every time I give you a requirement, I am not going to tell you that, hey, you know what, this is a requirement. Since this was the first one, I told you that this is a requirement. But you as a business analyst, you should have an ability to identify that, yes, you know what, this is the first requirement. All right, so what's the next question? Now, again, I'll tell you one thing. By nature, whenever SMEs, they give you requirements, they tend to give you incomplete requirements. Not because they want to make your life difficult, nothing like that. It's just how the nature is. It's just how they are. So your role as a BA is to retrospect on the requirement that they just gave you and try to see, do I need any more details to make this requirement complete so that my IT team has all the details that they would need to implement this. So every time you receive a requirement, you really want to retrospect, understand, and see if do I need any more details in this or not. If no, you ask the next question. If yes, you ask more questions within the same requirement to get to more details. So what's the next question?
Maybe where you would want the online banking link to be on the web page. So maybe ask them where would you like the online banking link to be placed on the page?
Exactly. So now see, now we are talking, right? So what did SME say? I just need a link on the page. Now imagine if you are a developer and if you had to code this, wouldn't you want to say where do you want the link to be displayed? Tell me the exact location of it. So then you of course will ask them, so where do you want the link to be displayed? What's the exact location? So the answer to that is I want the link to be displayed to the left of the location's hyperlink. That's where I want the link to be displayed. So that's the second requirement. What next?
The languages, if they need to display it in different language and to translate it depends on, the site setting. Can we do
That is, yes, that is correct. You can ask them, but in this case, since I know that we're not doing it in bilingual language like Spanish or English or something else. This is only for US and only for a bank in US. We don't need that. But if there is a business that operates in multiple countries that has multiple languages, absolutely you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe whether or not you want the link to take you to a different page, or if you want them to be able to input their information on the same page.
So the next question is, so again, Pratik, what did you do is you again give two options. I understand that there are only two options, but we want to keep in a habit of asking questions open-ended. And when you ask questions open-ended, the beauty of that is you just have to talk less and let them talk more.
Oh, gotcha. So maybe I should have rephrased that. What would you like the hyperlink to do when you click on it?
Exactly. Let them do the talking rather than us doing the talking. So the simple question you ask is, what happens when you click on the link, right? So the answer to that is, when you click on the link, it should take you to another page called online banking. It's a brand new page. We don't have it. We are going to create a new page. So again, the requirement that I just gave you, again, is an incomplete requirement. It's a very minor thing. So what is it that you think you can ask to make this requirement complete?
This is something you're asking for, something that happens before you click the link.
Nope. I mean, the question was, what happens when you click on the link? And the answer I gave is, when you click on the link, it'll take you to a new page called online banking. So the answer that I just gave you, again, it's an incomplete answer. So what is it that you want to ask? What is the requirement that you need to gather to make it complete?
What is online banking for you? Or, I mean,
No.
What option do you want it to make available on online banking?
No. So again, I'm telling you that requirement that I just said. When you click on the link, it'll take you to a new page called online banking. So this sentence that I'm saying, it's incomplete. Anytime you are a business analyst, you are gathering requirements, you always want to see from the perspective of the developers. You want to understand if the developer is coding this, what is it that they need?
The look of the template.
No.
Hmm.
All right. I think it's a little bit too detailed, and it's if you look at from the business perspective, they really don't care of the requirement that I'm going to give you. But the developers would always care, and your requirements should always contain those details. Or else they'll come back to you asking, hey, what about that? And then you'll have a duh moment, and then you'll have to fill it up. So the question is, anytime you open up a link, a basic question you always want to ask is, should the link open in the same page, or should it open as a separate window? It may not be really important from a business perspective, whether it opens the same page or it opens as a separate window, but the developers, they definitely need to know this in order to do their coding. So I hope you understand what I mean when I say it should open in the same page or as a separate window. So for example, when I click on this link, should this page disappear? Should bankofamerica.com disappear and it gets replaced by online banking page? Or should this page remains as is and the link opens as a separate page by itself? So that's what we need to ask. So anytime they click on something and some page opens, you always want to make sure by default that you ask them this question. All right, so now when you click on it, it displays you the online banking page in the same window is the requirement, the complete requirement. So now what is the next question?
How should the page look like?
Perfect. So then the next question is, what should the page display? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the layout of the page. So what I want each of you to do in your notebook is I want you to create a wireframe. I want you to create a sketch of the layout of the page that I'm going to say. So whenever we create a wireframe, the first thing we do is we create a rectangle which defines the boundaries of the page. And we'll give the name of the page as online banking because that's the name of the page, online banking. So on this page, I need a field called user ID, and I want that to be a text box.
Do we need to worry about the location of user ID? For example, do you want it in the middle of the page?
Great question. Super nice question. The reason you don't worry about it is in an ideal situation when you have a JAD session and when you're gathering requirements, what I would do is I would sketch this on a whiteboard in the conference room so everyone can see where I'm placing. So right now you're sketching it on a piece of paper, but if I were in a JAD session, I would use a whiteboard to sketch it right in front of everyone. So if at all, if I'm placing the text box in a location that they don't want, they would just tell me, saying, you know what, let's switch it to the left, to the right, to the center, to the top, to the bottom. They would tell us. But for now, feel free to put wherever you want, as long as the text box looks like a text box, that's all I care about. All right. So the first field is a user ID, it's a text box. Underneath that, I need a command button that says continue. Underneath that, I need two hyperlinks. The first link says new user registration. And the second link says forgot user ID question mark. All right. So what's your next question? Now, before I move on to the next question, I first want to show you the sketch of that wireframe, and I want to understand. All right, so I want you to compare your wireframe with what you see here. Does it look anything like this? Anyone has anything different? All right, so I assume everyone has the wireframe looking like this, more or less. All right, so now what's the next question?
What happens when the user ID the user enters the text, the user ID in the text box? Do they have to click on continue?
Wrong question.
The password field, where we should put it in this, underneath the user ID or in the next page?
It will be on a different page. I don't want the password to be displayed here.
Okay.
What happens if the user ID is inputted incorrectly?
Wrong question. See, I am always reminding you that always stick to the basics. And the basics is I want to ask questions in a logical sequence.
So wouldn't it be what happens when the user key in the user ID?
All of you are asking me the same question in different flavors.
Okay. And user.
All right, let me give you a hint, okay? Imagine you are a customer going onto the website for the first time. I give you the biggest hint, and you click on this link, online banking. It will take you to this page. What would you do next is what you would ask me when you gather requirements.
Okay, what should the user do after this page opens? Or enter the user ID.
All right, Krupa, I've been teaching for a long time, all right? And I thought I've heard all the different flavors of questions, but this was the first time I heard this. Okay, but a wrong question. I gave you a hint. You should be able to answer. Sharon, you should be able to answer or ask me the question.
The error, the error message that will come in for.
Nope. You're going in the wrong direction.
Hmm.
So
What
again,
happens when you click continue?
oh my God, it's again the same question in a different flavor. All right, I'm again giving you a little bit deeper hint. And after this, I'm sure that you'll be able to, I hope you'll be able to ask me the right question. What was the magical word I said? You're coming on the website for the first time, F-I-R-S-T, first time on this site. You click on online banking. You come to this page. Would you start entering the user ID?
No, register first.
Wow. Did you just say that? Okay. So what happened for the past 10 minutes? Why weren't any of you talking about it? Remember, I'm telling you again and again and again, you always want to ask a question in a logical workflow. If you're coming here for the first time, all of you were just concentrating on here, user ID. Do you even have a user ID? Have you even registered yourself? You have not. So why are we talking about logging in? So the next logical question is, what happens when you click new user registration? So the answer is, it's going to open up a new page in the same window, and the name of the page is new user registration.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah. So when you click on the link, it's going to open up a new page called new user registration in the same window. All right, what's the next question?
How should it look like?
All right, so that's exactly the right question, but a better way to ask the same question is, or a more professional way to ask the same question is, what are the data fields? What are the data fields that are displayed on that page? So they both mean the same, but the second one, which I said, it looks just a little bit more professional, right? Rather than how should it look like, we can always say, what are the fields that should be displayed on the page? So again, we'll create a wireframe. So I wanted to create a little bit bigger rectangle this time because I'm going to have about 8 to 10 fields on this page. And the name of your page is new user registration. So the first field I want is user ID. That's a text box. The next field I want is password, and that is again a text box. I need another text box for re-enter password. I need another text box for SSN. Now, I am going to talk about two fields which you'll never see on a registration page of a bank. I'm deliberately adding them because I want to give you different flavors of UI elements. So don't question that, you know what, I never see these fields. I know we'll never see them. Just want to give you a different flavor of fields so you understand. So the next field we want is gender. And I want two radio button options, male, female, for gender. They both are radio button options. The next field I want is interests. Interests. And I want 4 checkbox options. Sports, travel, movies, reading. Next, security question. That's a drop down. Security answer. As a radio button. And underneath, I need 2 command buttons. One for register and the other for cancel. All right. Now, when I say I really want you to be awake, I really want you to be awake because I gave you a field which can never exist for something. And I never got any questions back. I know I want you to believe what I teach, but don't believe me so blindly that you stop questioning what I'm saying.
Security question. You said radio button.
It's not a security question. I said security answer.
Security
as a
answer. Button. You said radio button, yeah.
So what sense does that make?
You're supposed to have choices, right?
It makes no sense. What should the security answer be? In what format?
Text box?
Yes, it has to be a text box. It can never be a radio button, right? And if it is a radio button, then what are the options for the radio button? So please be awake. Please pay attention when you type or when you write. And don't just blindly keep writing, because if you If you question what I'm saying, it will really help you understand the subject rather than blindly just doing what I'm asking you to do. All right, so this is, yes.
About security question, the drop down, do we have to ask what questions do you want in the drop down menu?
Yes, absolutely. So right now, what we just did is I just went quickly through all the fields that needs to be displayed. However, there's a lot more questions that we need to ask for this page for it to be complete in terms of requirements gathering. So yes, we will eventually. My first question is, this is how the page should look like. So I want to make sure that you have it in the same format. And I'm mainly concerned about a drop down, a text box, a checkbox, a radio button, and these text boxes. As long as they look like, I don't care about how they're placed. As long as the radio button looks like this, and the checkbox looks like this, and the drop down looks like this, that's all I care about. And command button looks like this. All right. So now what's the next question?
I am just to give, maybe I don't know if it's right, but how long should the user ID be?
Very nice. Very nice. What else regarding user ID? So you asked about the length, right? Data length.
Should it be in numbers, or, I mean, should it be related?
There we go. Perfect. So see, and you'll realize that there is a pattern to asking questions. And as we go through this exercise on this page, you'll realize that whenever I see a text box, I blindly will be asking the following 3 questions. Whenever I see a radio button, I have to ask the following 3 questions. And you'll realize the pattern. And what I've also done is I've created a spreadsheet in which I've documented that whenever you see a text box, these are the questions you always have to get answers for. So let's understand that. But Krupa, you just said it correct. However, the thing you missed is for any field, right, that needs to be submitted on something, the very basic question you would always have, irrespective whether it's a drop down or a text box or a checkbox, is this a required field? Is this a mandatory field for the user to answer? So that's the first question for this. Is user ID required? The answer is yes, it's a required field. Second question, what is the data type? What kind of data does it accept? Data type. So the answer is alphanumeric data. And the third question, data length. So the length is minimum 8, maximum 16. That's the data length. All right, the next field is password. Now again, it's a text box. So if it's a text box, I'm going to ask the same 3 questions. And again, the answers are exactly the same. It's a required field, alphanumeric data, minimum 8, maximum 16. Re-enter password. This is a no-brainer, has to be exactly the same as the password. So it's exactly the same. So alphanumeric required field minimum 8, maximum 16. SSN, it's a required field, numeric data, exact 9 digits.
I have a question for that.
Mhm.
I know some people like to put like a dash in between. Do we want that here?
No, I think it's fine. But however, it's a great question because this is exactly where you should be asking. So I am fine. However, I forgot to give you a requirement for password and re-enter password. The requirement was, it's a very common, but we should have, we want to talk about it, is the data is encrypted. So whatever data you enter for password and re-enter password, the data needs to be encrypted. And for SSN, I want the first 5 digits to be encrypted. So I only want the last 4 digits to be displayed. All right, we now change the flavor of questions. We move on to gender. So it's a radio button. So the questions are, what are the options? So the options are male, female. It's an optional field. And whenever you have things like radio button, check boxes, drop down, you also want to check, is there any default selection? Now, common sense says that you don't want to ask this question here, saying, is there any default selection? Why? Because how can a system default select whether it's a male or a female? So it's a no-brainer that there'll be no default selection. But had it been some other kind of a field, you may want to check with them, any default selections. We then go to interests, and it's a checkbox. So again, the questions, what are the options? So these are the 4 options. And again, the question you want to ask is any default selection. And again, no default selections here. Why? Because I want to know the interest of the person. What's the point if I pre-select for them? So I don't want any default selections.
Can they select all of them, or is it limited to few options?
You should never ask this question when it's a checkbox, because the reason you provide a checkbox is they can select one or many or all options. That's the behavior or the characteristic of a checkbox. So yes, they can.
And is it a required?
It's an optional field. So let's talk about this. When you try to register, you come across a checkbox on almost every registration page. And that checkbox by default is always checked. Also on the same page, you'll come across another checkbox, which by default will never be checked. So what are the 2 options that you would see? One for a checkbox, which by default is always checked, and the other for a checkbox, which is never checked.
The one I could remember is for example, just subscribe for future.
Exactly, right?
Emails.
Subscribe me for for email promotions.
And
So
I'm sorry.
yeah, so you want that to be default checked because the business wants the user to be automatically enrolled in that. So by default, that will always be checked. And what about a checkbox which is never checked?
This, I don't know, it does not relate to the same topic, but maybe agreed to terms and condition. We manually have to do that a lot of times.
Exactly. Not a lot of times, all the times. You would never see any website where they have checked that box because they want you to check it yourself, saying, I am agreeing to terms and conditions. So by default, that checkbox will never be checked. All right, moving on to the next one. Security question. It's a drop down. So why don't you tell me what questions you want to ask to gather the requirements for this field?
What is the data value you want in this field?
So, yep. So rather than saying data value, we can say what are the options to be displayed in the dropdown, right? Because a dropdown displays options. So what are the different options to be displayed in the dropdown? So what they'll do is they'll give you 4 to 5 questions: your mother's maiden name, your first pet's name, your best friend's name in school, what city were you born, where did you meet your spouse for the first time. So they would have 5 questions or 4 questions, and they'll give you those questions. So you write down those questions. There are 2 more questions that you want to ask related to this security question. What are those 2 other questions that you want to ask?
Do you want them to have their own questions?
Good question, but no, I don't want them to create their own question. I just want these 5 options to be displayed in the dropdown.
Is it a required field?
Yes, it's a required field, but this does not cover the 2 other 2 questions that I was referring to. It's a required field. I still need 2 more questions to be asked. So if there are 5 questions to be displayed in the dropdown, you need to understand the sort order of those options. What should be displayed on the top, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. Again, SMEs may not really care about whether your mother's maiden name is displayed on the top or your best friend's name is displayed on the top as a question. However, the developers have to code it, and they need an arrangement as to what goes first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So you always want to ask, what is the sort order of those 5 options? So you know what SMEs will say is, you know what, I really don't care. Just sort them alphabetically. It doesn't matter. So just sort them alphabetically from top to bottom. So that's the answer. And the third question you want to ask is any default selection. Should any of the questions be default selected for the user? Again, the answer is no default selection. All right. The next is security answer, and that's a text box. So what are the 3 questions we ask when it's a text box?
Is it case sensitive?
Okay, not case sensitive. Good question.
Showing or encrypt? No, never mind.
Yeah, I don't want it to be encrypted. So what were the 3 things we talked about, Shirin? When it's a text box, what are the 3 default things you can talk about? So whenever it's a text box, you always have to ask these 3 questions.
Required field, right?
Yes, it's a required field.
Data type
Yep. So the data type is alphanumeric data.
and the data length.
And then, yeah.
And the length. So I want minimum 2 and maximum 56 characters for this. All right, so we went through the requirements for all the fields on this page. Any more questions you have for this page, or are we good on this new user registration page?
Can we be discussing the register and cancel?
Exactly, right? We have to discuss the behavior of what happens when you click register and what happens when you click cancel. So we'll start with the easy one. When you click cancel, the entered data gets discarded and navigates the user to online banking page. So the entered data gets discarded and navigates the user to online banking page. All right, moving on to the next. When you click register, system performs the following validations. So there are two kinds of validations, right, that are performed. Normally, first is they perform validations across all the fields on the page, a generic validation. And then they go through each field and see, are there any validations specific to any of these fields? So let's start documenting the validation. So the first validation it'll perform is all the required data entered. So they go across all the fields, they scan all the fields and make sure, does every field which is required has a data entered? So that's the first validation, is all the required data entered. The second validation that you would perform is the data valid? Is the entered data valid?
And can you repeat the name of that validation? One was generic and the other one was?
Field specific. So these, both the validations that I just gave you, they're all generic validations, right? It's ran across the page. They're not specific to a field. They are run across the page. The first is the data valid? So you scan all the fields and you see whether it contains, the required fields contains data. And the second validation is the data valid? So again, you scan across all the fields and you check whether is the data valid across all the text boxes. So when I say is the data valid, what is it that I'm trying to validate?
Yeah, making sure that all the like, let's say the user ID has the type of data that we want in there.
Exactly, right? So we want to make sure the data type, if it's alphanumeric, it has to be alphanumeric. When we say minimum 8 and maximum 16, it has the right data length. If the user has just entered alphanumeric data, but only 7 characters, that's an error message. So you want to scan across all the fields and make sure that the data is entered and the data is valid. Then The next few validations that will, so these were the two generic validations, which is true across all the fields of the page. Then we want to go through each field and see, are there any validations which are specific to this particular field? So the first validation is for user ID. The validation is the user ID unique? So you want to make sure that the user ID that the user wants is not taken by another user. So that's the validation. Is the user ID unique? For password and re-entered password, the validation is, does the re-entered password match the entered password? Does the re-entered password match the entered password?
What about the password? Don't we have to validate that that also has the required information?
Yes, but remember we already have processed generic
Oh,
validation where we said that data is valid across all the fields.
okay.
We then go to SSN. So there are two validations for SSN. The first validation is the entered SSN associated with an active account in the bank? I'll repeat again. Is the entered SSN associated with an active account in the bank? So what am I trying to validate here?
They are just not putting like an old or expired SSN.
Nope. No, what's an old or expired SSN?
I mean,
No.
I don't know.
So they have an account with the bank?
Yes, you want to make sure, right, that this person has an active account in the bank. So every account has an SSN associated, right? So you want to make sure that you're allowing them to create a user ID because they have an account in the bank. If they don't have an account in the bank, if we don't have any open accounts for them, we don't want them to have a user ID. What are they going to do? So we want to make sure that this is a customer of the bank. That's what I'm validating. Getting it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And the second validation I want for SSN is the SSN associated with an active user ID? Is the SSN associated with an active user ID? All right, so what am I trying to validate here?
See if the person already the user already registered.
Exactly, right? So they may be a customer of the bank and they already have registered once. Now they're trying to create another user ID. So you want to make sure that the same person should only have one user ID and they should not have 2 or 3 or more user ID. One SSN should only have one user ID associated to them. So that's what we are trying to validate. Then for gender, it's only selections, interest, only selections. So I think those were all the different validations we want to run. So the question was, what happens when we click register? So the answer was, when you click register, it performs the following validations. What are the next 2 follow-up questions? That when you click register, it performs the following validations. So what's the next obvious question?
So once everything is valid, what happens?
Right. So there are two questions: are what happens if everything's valid, and what happens if
It's invalid.
it's invalid. So we'll first start with the invalid scenario. So if something's invalid, you remain on the same page. You don't go anywhere. You highlight the field which had errors in red, and you display the error message. So what is the next question?
Okay, so we said if it's invalid, we stay on the page, we highlight the field that's invalid,
Yep, and display the error message.
display the error message, and then what after that? Like
So the question is, again, that is an incomplete requirement. What is the next question that you want to ask to complete that requirement?
What is the error message?
Exactly. You want to get the verbiage of exactly the error message. So this is a classic example when SMEs will say, you know what, why don't you email me after this JAD session? Why don't you email me all the validations that can go wrong? And I will respond you back with error messages, because I need to think about the verbiage of the error message. So this becomes a classic example of an open question or open questions that needs answered when you meet them for the next JAD session. So that's the scenario when something goes wrong. Now, if everything goes right, if all the validations pass, in an ideal world, it takes you to a confirmation page that congratulations, you're registered. However, I'm just changing the requirement, and I'm saying if all the validations pass, I want the system to directly log you into your account. So what is the next question that you would ask? I'm again giving you an incomplete requirement.
Is it in the same window?
Yes, in the same window, but that was, I mean, yes, I forgot to say that, yes, in the same window, but what is it that I did not talk about? So I'm again repeating, if everything passes, system should directly log in the user in the same window and should directly log into their account. So what is the next obvious question that you would have that you would want to ask?
The user will receive an auto email saying to confirm.
No. So I don't want those things. I don't want those things about confirmation or anything. I'm saying if you click register and if all the validations pass, the system should directly log you into your account. So this requirement that I'm giving you is an incomplete requirement. What is the next immediate question that you should ask me to make this requirement complete?
Okay, I know you said something about I should not ask what should it look like. Instead, what are the data fields it should display?
But before that, you're almost there, Krupa. You're almost there. So before that, what is the question that you would ask? What is, I mean, it should just come directly. I mean, if I'm saying if it directly logs, it should directly log you in. So what is the immediate question or confusion arises when I'm giving you this vague requirement?
The URL?
Pretty close, Sharon. Not the URL. You want to say what page? What is the landing page? The vague requirement I gave you is it should directly log you in. Now, what does logging in mean? It means nothing. Why don't you tell me the name of the page that it should be displayed? We also call it the landing page. So you say if they click register, if all the validations pass, what page should be displayed? What you gave me is they should directly log you in. Now, what does logging in mean? Nothing. It could show you your accounts page, it should show your account summary page, it should show your transactions page. You tell me what page you want to see. What is the first thing that the user says when they log in? Tell me the name of the page. So it will show you the account summary page. That's the landing page. And now that completes that requirement, that if all the validations pass, display the account summary page. So now what is the next question? Anyone? What is the next question?
Now, should I ask what are the data fields required? Or
I
just
was exactly that. I was waiting for you to ask me this question. So what are the data fields to be displayed? I mean, logically, that is the right question, but I'm not asking this question in this JAD session. Why? What is the agenda? What are the two requirements that we wanted to talk about in this JAD session, Krupa? What was the agenda for this JAD session?
ability to register and ability to log in.
Right? What you are talking is what should be displayed on the account summary page. That is a separate business requirement that I'm highlighting. And that is something that accounts management SMEs do. And if I don't want SMEs to be talking outside the agenda, I also don't want to go outside the agenda. I want to stick within the agenda. So with that requirement, when they say that they should display account summary page, I am done gathering requirements for ability for a user to register. I just finished gathering the requirements of how a user will register. Now I want to talk about, in this JAD session, I want to talk about how the user logs in. Are we good?
Yes, I didn't even realize I totally changed the topic.
Exactly, and it happens many a times in the JAD session. Just in the moment of heat of discussion, you just start talking about something else. And it's not deliberate, it just happens. So hence the role of a facilitator is to make sure that we always talk about things which are a part of the agenda and we stick to that. All right, so we are done with registration, going back to the login page that you really wanted to talk about initially. So now what's the next question? We want to talk about ability for the user to log in. Are we now going to ask what is the length of the user ID, data fields, data type?
Nope.
Nope, because we already know that. So we simply will talk about the workflow. So what is the question that you would ask now to gather these requirements for login?
What happens when they enter incomplete data or hit continue?
Perfect. So you'll say, what happens when the user enters the user ID and clicks continue? So the system is going to validate the data. If it's valid, it's going to take them to the password page. If it's invalid, it's going to display an error message on the same page. And the error message is invalid user ID. And if the user ID is valid, it's going to display the password page in the same window. So again, your next question is, what should the password page display? So the password page is going to display something like this. And again, your next logical question is, what happens when the user enters password and clicks login? So when the user enters password, clicks login, the system validates the password. If the password is valid, it displays the account summary page. If the password is invalid, it displays the error message, and the error message is invalid password, please re-enter. And if they enter wrong password 3 times, the system should lock the account.
Wow, you were super fast, and I'm imagining SMEs are going to be the same way.
Not this fast, but I deliberately went fast because I wanted you to realize this. And you always have the right to stop and say, hey, can you please go slow? I'm just trying to catch up. So good job.
Okay, so I don't know, this might be not related questions, but are we allowed to record them at the time, or should we take permission before recording them?
You always have to take permission before recording because it's a law, right? That you just cannot record anything without asking everyone. So for example, if you're on a phone call or if you're in a meeting and if you're just recording it without other people knowing it, it's not allowed. It has to, you have to take a permission. Hey, do you mind if I record this? Now, it's a great idea to record the sessions, but I'm telling you from my experience, it's even more painful to play the recording and going through it again. It's really, really painful. So you always can take or can do the recordings, but you just want to do the recordings in case as a safety net, that in case if you miss out on something, you have something to fall back on. But if you're recording, that does not mean that you don't take notes, because
Oh no, yeah, of course. That's
so
always
you
the same.
always want to take notes, but you just want to record it just in case if you miss out on something, you can play it again and hear it. So I'm going to repeat again, okay, and I'll behave this time. All right. So are we good on user ID? You enter user ID, it's valid. You click continue. It takes you to the password page in the same window. If it's invalid, it displays an error message saying invalid user ID. Good here? Take it as a yes.
No. What is the error message?
Invalid user ID. Invalid user ID is the message. And now I go to the password page, and again, exactly the same behavior. The user enters the password. The user clicks login. System validates the password. So user enters the password, user clicks login, system validates the password. If the password is valid, you display account summary page. If the password is invalid, display the error message, which is invalid password. Now, if the user enters wrong password 3 times, lock the account.
I have a question.
Yes.
Lock the account for like few minutes or permanently lock the account?
Great question. Love it. So this has to be locked until you unlock it. So how do you unlock it? You'll have to call customer care. Customer care is going to ask you a couple of questions, and they'll be able to unlock the account for you. So to answer your question in short, the account will be locked for an indefinite period until it is unlocked by calling the customer care. The customer does not have an ability to unlock the account themselves on the web page. How inconvenient, right?
Yes,
If
sir.
if I were a smart SME, I would not want that to happen. Why? Because my whole purpose of creating an application is I want to reduce the phone calls to the customer service. Phone calls are expensive, and calling customer service is again a bad experience, right? I mean, I'm an end user. It's just a turn off when somebody says, call the customer service to get this done. Why can't I do it myself? So it's a bad it's a bad example of bad requirements. In a real world, you never want to do that. Instead, you want to have a capability where they should be able to unlock their account by answering some sensitive questions related to their account, to their SSN and things like that. All right. And if everything is valid, it displays the account summary page. So that's the requirements for ability to log in. So you realize, right, that for some business requirements, it takes a lot of time to gather the requirements. And for some other requirements, it's really fast to finish up. It all depends on the nature of what business requirement we are talking about. So that's how you conduct a JAD session. That's how you ask questions. That's how you take notes. I'm planning to do another case study on requirements gathering, and I'll teach you then how to write a functional requirements document out of this, which would be the goal of the next session that we have. So I'll take some example from a real life scenario, and again we'll do some brainstorming on how to ask questions, how to gather requirements, which will be more realistic. And then I'm going to teach you how to create or how to document a functional requirements document, which is the first deliverable for you as a business analyst. There are 3 different kinds of documents we create. It could be FRD or a use case or a user story. So in the next 2 sessions that we have, we'll learn 2 types of documentation. It'll be FRD and a use case, one after the other in 2 separate sessions. Any questions on what we covered today? I think I'd like to end today's class here. Yes, Sharon, a question for you?
We
No,
didn't do
everything
anything
is
with
good,
that
thank
forgot password link on the bottom.
Yeah, we did not do anything with forgot password. Why? Because they are separate business requirements: ability to retrieve a password, ability to change a password, ability to retrieve user ID.
Okay.
That was not the agenda for this JAD session.
Okay, no problem. I'm good then.
All right. Alrighty, so I think that's all I wanted to cover for today's JAD session. For today's session.
I have a question before we leave.
Just give me 30 seconds.